Hey guys, so we are going to be doing things a little bit differently from this point out. We are done covering new material, so that means that it is straight up review, which also means that you are only going to have to worry about areas that you feel or you recognize from taking the diagnostic test you have a weakness in. So that's kind of exciting. I'm going to try and teach you some good test taking strategies and hopefully fill in any blanks or gaps you got throughout the year or during this whole crazy shutdown period. Good news is the test taking tips that I give you are most likely going to be able to be used in any subject. And the really kind of awesome thing is in science, the way that they are changing the TNReady test is, to me, it looks like they're trying to model it after the ACT test. And if I'm just going to be completely and totally honest with you, no amount of science that you have had or will ever have will help you on the ACT test. Because that test is mostly about knowing how to take the test, not actually knowing the scientific content on it. It's more of like kind of tricky critical thinking questions, looking at charts and graphs and stuff. So even though you're not having to take TNReady this year, some of the info I can give you may still help you in years ahead. So let's get started. The first standard that we are going to be focusing on today is standards, but it ties very, very heavily into the life science unit that we've completed during the shutdown. And it's the first 8.ESS2.1. Says analyze and interpret data to support the assertion that rapid or gradual geographic changes lead to drastic population changes and extinction events. This standard is one of the few that's pretty self-explanatory. In layman terms, it's saying that look at data, charts, graphs, phenomena, etc., and pretty much use that data to explain how geographical changes affect populations over time, negatively, beneficially. What it's really translating to is adaptations, variations, and evolution. And that's what the standard, the heart of it's getting at. Even though it's in the Earth systems, this is looking at how environment or nature shapes organisms' outward appearance or their behaviors. That's what this boils down to. And that's going to have everything to do with this slide. Let's focus on adaptations and variations then, because some of you struggle with understanding the difference between them. They're super similar, they are related to each other, but these two words do not mean the same thing, okay? A variation is anything, good or bad, or anywhere in between even, that makes an organism different from any other organism in its population. Like my red hair would be a variation. The fact that I have freckles is a variation. The fact that I'm short is a variation and very pale. Anything that makes me different. That doesn't mean it's made me better adapted. That doesn't mean I'm some new evolved species. It just means I'm different. And every single population of organisms, regardless of species, will have variation in it. Even organisms like giraffes and zebras that have spots and stripes that almost look exactly the same and hard to distinguish between organisms, there are variations in those stripe and spot patterns. Not every single organism is cookie cutter perfectly identical. So just remember, a variation is any difference in a population of organisms. Now, an adaptation. Think about what the word adapt means. It's going to mean to change. And typically it means to change for the better. So an adaptation is going to be a beneficial variation. So all the good variations that help organisms live, gather resources faster or better, those are adaptations, okay? You see that they're related. An adaptation is a type of variation. but not every variation is an adaptation. There are negative variations too. I remember when we talked about this chapter that if you were a snail or a bug and you lived on the ground and ended up being hot pink, that is not an adaptation at all, because you are going to stand out and a predator is going to come snatch you up and is going to eat you. And typically being eaten alive and killed and not being able to pass your genes on to your offspring, that's not a good thing. So not every variation is an adaptation. Adaptations are only the good ones. So how does all of this lead back to our standard? The standard is talking about how nature influences populations over time. Examples of this would be hot and cold trends. Earth naturally goes through cycles of heating up and cooling down. That's why we've had multiple ice ages in Earth's history, and that may even explain a little bit of the global warming trend that's going on right now. Now, that's a whole different standard and a whole different story, and we'll get to that later. But Earth periodically goes through periods of heating and cooling. So if Earth began going into another ice age, organisms with shorter and thinner fur are going to be at a disadvantage, whereas organisms with thicker fur would have a better advantage. They're more likely to withstand the cold. They'll also be more likely to gather resources better and to pass those genes on to their offspring. And remember, evolution is a slow ongoing process. And just because populations have adaptations and they change over time doesn't always mean that they spring up a new species. Populations will always have these variations and changes and be in a state of flux. But that doesn't mean that we're automatically going to be getting new species all the time. It doesn't happen that way. The example I'm using now with the thickness of an animal's coat, you just may see furrier, woollier animals. Nothing new, crazy, or fascinating there. Again, if it's colder, you may see a tendency for populations to become lighter in color, because when the temperature drops and it becomes cooler, snow is typically more prevalent. And camouflage is a major factor. Whether you're a predator or a prey animal, you're going to want to blend into your surroundings. If you're prey, you're going to want to blend in so you're not on somebody's dinner menu. And if you're a predator, you're going to need just a tiny bit of stealth in order to capture your prey, because most organisms aren't willing to just throw themselves down on your dinner plate for you to eat and be like, you know, I go really good with carrots. It takes a little bit of work to catch your prey. So this is how nature can influence it. Another way that we discuss nature can influence it back when we discussed the chapter is with geographic isolation. This is where we had the A-birds and kaibab squirrels, where they lived on different parts of the Grand Canyon. They weren't able to get back to their original destination, and being separated by this rather substantial landmark resulted in some differences between them. And that's the main information that this standard's focusing on. So now we'll take a minute and see how they may present test questions to you. So here we've got our first example of a test question that will touch on this standard. It says some scientists compared fossils of the common ancestor of horses with modern horses. The table shows what the scientists found during their analysis. The scientists claim that modern horses are better adapted for survival in the present day environment than the common ancestor would have been. Which two statements best support this claim? So we've got an ancestor with multiple toes. All toes are easy to see and have full function. That is creepy thinking about with a horse. Modern horse, single middle toe that over time evolved into a hoof. Other toes are smaller and have no function. Also creepy to think about horse hooves as toes. But I digress. We need the two statements that best support the claim that modern horses are better adapted than their ancestor. So option one, we have organisms will acquire helpful traits from their surroundings to survive. Let's read that again one more time. Organisms will acquire helpful traits from their surroundings to survive. This isn't a video game. There's not some shady dude in a weird outfit standing obviously somewhere sparkling with items you need to take with you from the environment that will help you succeed. That's not quite how this looks. The horse didn't just like rip its toes off in exchange for the hoof upgrade. So, not thinking so looking at that one. Let's look at option 2. Organisms that have hooves are able to live in a variety of habitats. Okay, I can think of mountain goats in different mountainous climates and terrain. I can think of horses. Okay. Deer have a type of hoof. Cows, pigs, lots of hoofed animals. Different types of environments. This one seems doable. Let's keep going and check the other ones just in case. Organisms with multiple toes are easily seen by predators, so parents choose not to pass the trait on to their offspring. I don't think I need to read that one again. I don't know any woman who's had a child that has thought, well, I always hated this part of my body, so I'm not going to pass that on to my baby, and it work. That's not how genes work. They just don't do that. That's just so many levels of no. Moving on. Organisms that have hooves are more likely to reproduce. I mean, meh, okay. It sounds a lot better than option 1 and option 3, so 4 has a chance right now. Let's check 5 just to be sure. Organisms with 4 legs will develop a hoof because of the need to balance on 4 legs. So what this answer choice is saying is that every organism on 4 legs will eventually have hooves because hooves are better. I don't know about you, but the thought of having hooved dogs and hooved cats or hooved hamsters or geckos, just no, that doesn't seem like that's going to be a thing anytime soon. So I'm going to say that's a hard pass on that one. No. So the answer choices on this one will be the 2nd and the 4th, hands down. Now I realize not every question is that easy, but at the same time, some of the answers, if you just kind of give them a moment and try to think of a real life scenario with them, they kind of make fun of themselves. Not even gonna lie, they kind of make fun of themselves a little bit. Okay, so here's our next question you can take a look at on this standard. It says, antibiotic resistance can appear in a bacteria population when the bacteria are overexposed to antibiotics. When an infection occurs, an antibiotic-resistant bacteria will survive and reproduce. The diagram shows a genetically diverse population of gut bacteria living in an animal that receives antibiotics. Which option best shows the bacteria population after the application of the antibiotic? Now, I realize some of you will kind of be doing the, what did I just read thing? That's okay. Slow down and break it apart, because a lot of this question is very, very redundant. The first sentence is going to be one of your key pieces of information here. It tells you that antibiotic resistance, which is going to be a bacteria's just not affected by an antibiotic anymore. That's all that breaks down to, is over time, antibiotics become less effective in killing bacteria. Next sentence. Antibiotic-resistant bacteria will survive and reproduce. Well, obviously, if the thing that's trying to kill you does not kill you, you get to live and pass your genes on to your offspring. And most likely, some of those genes you're passing on to your offspring are the ones that let you be resistant to the antibiotics. So below we have a diagram, and it shows a population of bacteria before an environmental change, which is the introduction of an antibiotic, and we're supposed to figure out what the population afterwards is going to look like. So your key says type 1 bacteria killed by the antibiotic. Well, if type 1 is killed by the antibiotic and we give it the antibiotic, they're going to be dead, which means they don't get to make the population afterwards, so I'm not foreseeing many stars in the answer. Type 2 bacteria resistant to the antibiotic, which means they are not killed, which means they get to reproduce and pass their genes on to the offspring. So I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of hexagons in the answer. Let's see what your answer choices look like. So we have, our options are a little jumbled here. Option 2, a lot of hexagon. Option 1, everything died. Option 3 looks exactly the same as the beginning picture. And option 4 has a brand new type of bacteria that we have no information about whatsoever. Let's eliminate some answer choices here. We had some resistant bacteria. So option 1 of no bacteria is not a good option. Something is going to live and reproduce. If we really had something in existence that killed all bacteria, that's probably about the only thing you were ever prescribed at the doctor. Option 4, poof, brand new species. Now, we did discuss that bacteria and viruses evolve and mutate way more quickly than any other organism because of their short lifespans and their quick reproductive cycles. However, you aren't going to have 2 different species and just poof a full population of new species like that after 1 round of antibiotics. That is straight up not going to happen. Remember, 1 organism cannot evolve. A population of organisms evolve over many, say many like 8,000 more times, many generations. It doesn't just happen instantaneously. And since we have some that were not antibiotic resistant, option 3, not looking good either. Option 2 is your correct answer here. The resistant ones live and pass their genes on to the offspring. Okay, our next question that ties to this standard says, a heavy flood washed away over 5 meters of soil and rock. The layer of rock that was exposed by the flood contained remains of brachiopods, crinoids, and corals that existed in warm, shallow seas 350 million years ago. Some of the fossils that were found are shown. Which statement is the best explanation for the presence of these marine fossils in an inland area of the United States? Again, sometimes I just try to overload you with information, and sometimes some of it's completely and totally unnecessary. This deals with the extinction event part of this standard, because obviously inland in the middle of the United States, you don't see many marine organisms. So let's pick apart the information it gives you and focus on what's actually necessary to answer the question. And the question is, which statement explains the presence of marine fossils in an inland area of the United States? And honestly, that's really the only information you need here. If you have no idea what a brachiopod is, you know how to pronounce it, you've never seen that word before, please do not flip out and think that you're dumb, because you're not. You don't need to know that word to answer this question. That does not even need to be a blip on your knowledge radar. They put stuff in there to help themselves trip you up and try to throw you off and confuse you and make you doubt yourself. So if that isn't part of your vocabulary, it's okay. There's still a really good chance that you can get this question right. So, marine. That is going to be a key word in the question you do need to know. If you do not know the significance of the word marine, marine means salt water. So we're talking about ocean organisms here. Inland is the second key word for you to focus on. Inland means inland. Inland, surrounded by land. Okay? Think Kansas, for example. Okay? Why would we have ocean organisms in a place where there is no ocean? That's all this is asking. So our answer choices say, the brachiopods could live in water and on land. Well, if they could live on land, it probably wouldn't have washed up fossils. Because fossils are dead things. And dead things kind of don't. Actually, fossils aren't even dead things. They are the mineralized remains of what used to be a dead thing. So, no. Not happening. The fossils were carried to the area by floodwaters. Okay. Sounds better than option A. So, meh. However, floodwaters washed away dirt, exposing these fossils. So, you wouldn't think dirt would be washed away to expose stuff that had been previously washed there. Kind of doesn't make sense. The crinoids and corals grew on terrestrial surfaces. It straight up told you they were marine. Marine again meaning ocean. Terrestrial is a fancy word for saying land. Now I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, there are no land corals. And then your final answer choice. The area used to be covered by an ocean. Well, there you go. That is the one that is going to be your correct answer. All right, here's our next question. A biologist studies a population of chipmunks. Some of the biologist's findings are shown below. Which two inferences about the chipmunk population can be supported with the data gathered by the biologist? So we got years 1 through 20, the population remains below 125. Less than half of newborn chipmunks survive to adulthood. Competition for food and resources limits population growth. Year 21 and beyond. 90% of newborn chipmunks survive to adulthood. The population increases to over 200 chipmunks. So we see a major jump in baby chipmunk survival and a population increase. So let's see what answer choices we have and what two could possibly support that. The amount of food in the area decreased, causing more chipmunks to survive to reproductive age. You get less food and you starve, therefore more of you live and make more chipmunks. No, that's not how that works. Chipmunks in later generations showed greater genetic diversity than previous generations, allowing for greater survival rate in later generations. Okay, translating to chipmunks in later generations had adaptations that were passed on to their offspring for better survival rates. Okay, that sounds doable. Next one. Chipmunks migrated from one country to another country to increase the number of chipmunks in the studied area. You people, I hope you have seen the size of a chipmunk. If not, hold your hand out and imagine a small fuzzy animal sitting in the palm of your hand. Do you see that small fuzzy creature migrating from, and yes, there is an R there, one country to another? No, that's not how that works. Next answer choice. Individual chipmunks changed their genetic makeup and became more successful in the environment. If we could change our genetic makeup at will, plastic surgery, number one, would not be a thing. Sickness, to an extent, would probably not be a thing either. And, well, no, that's not how chipmunks work. That's not how genetics works. We don't just get to, like, okay, I changed my DNA. And our last answer choice. The number of predators in the area decreased, so more chipmunks were able to survive. Okay, that is another one that sounds very plausible. If the thing that kills you dies, then you have a better chance of living and surviving. So, pretty obvious here. The second and the fourth answer choices give pretty good, clear reasons as to why we might see a population increase in chipmunks. Looks like the next question's actually on the same topic too. Diagram shows the development of two species, the giraffe and the okapi, probably pronouncing that wrong, but we'll go with it, through the process of gradualism. During the first stage of gradualism, shown as geographic isolation, The two branches of the species became separated from each other. During the second stage, shown as genetic isolation, the okapi and the giraffe developed into two distinct species. Which statement best describes the continued existence of the giraffe and the okapi? This touches again on geographic isolation. Sometimes geographic features isolate a small number of individuals from the rest of the population. Over several generations, there may be obvious differences between the two populations and could result in two different species. In this instance, the giraffe and the okapi. Second thing it mentioned was gradualism, which is one of the speeds of evolution. Now, there are two speeds of evolution. Gradualism is the slower one that's going to go more with Darwin's model. The slow, ongoing process through mutations, variations, adaptations. You eventually might just maybe almost get a new species over time. So let's take that knowledge and apply it to this question. And the question one more time says, which statement best describes the continued existence of the giraffe and the okapi? The question's really asking, if they had a common ancestor and evolution was a thing, why do we have both species? Why don't we just have one? This is like dogs and wolves. If dogs evolved from wolves, we still have both. The two species will likely interbreed and develop a new species with characteristics of their common ancestor. I'm not going to say that's likely. It could happen because it's science and anything's possible, but likely is a strong word there. The two species will be in competition for resources with each other in a single environment, leading to the extinction of one species. Maybe. But extinction? That's another strong word. That means that every single member of the other species dies. The two species are no longer able to interbreed, and both will continue to exist and reproduce in their separate environments. Pretty much what's happening with the two species right now. So that sounds pretty plausible. The two species will likely interbreed with each other, resulting in young with characteristics of both species. Again, that use of the word likely doesn't make me like this answer choice. So probably rule that one out. The answer on this one is definitely going to be C. That they become their own separate, distinct species. That's probably the main reason that they put geographic isolation, genetic isolation, and gradualism all in the part of the question, is to kind of lead you to, we're going to end up creating a new species here. Well, you made it. That's the end of all the questions that go over this topic. And hopefully that clears some stuff up for you guys. If you had any other questions, leave them in the comments, reach out to me through an email. I'll be more than happy to break anything down and explain it to you. Hopefully you guys learned something, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.